We have covered a lot of ground in this course so far, and I hope you had a good time learning more about Notch. Now it's time to combine all the techniques you've picked up. This chapter does not require you to follow my steps exactly, as I'll be improvising using deformers, cloners, particles, and path tracing. And so should you. I can't wait to see what you come up with. And as always, please share your work using hashtag MadeWithNotch so I and the others can check it out. Welcome to the workshop chapter of this intermediate course. Now, in this chapter, there is no solid brief. We literally will improvise with all the tools and techniques that we've discussed during this course. So you're not obliged to follow my steps. I encourage you to improvise yourself, but this will be my take on a given scene and a given assets. So let's just talk about the scene and the given assets. In this case, we have three meshes. They are all in static poses and they're on a podium. And there is a skylight and there's a light scattering beam I see for the lighting. So that's a good start. We do have a camera. So here's our podium here in the very top. And here are the three static 3D models that we have. So let's get started. I think first thing that I want to do is perhaps work on a material of those three guys and on the lighting. I really want to set in a proper lighting because, well, since I can flip back and forward from path tracing to a real time, I can literally just do that as a first step. So with that said, let's give them a material and then let's talk a little bit about lights. I see that there's already a material node attached to all three of them. That's great. So let's make it a bit more interesting. I think I'm going to go for fractal noise this time, and I'm going to pipe it to the first input, color texture. Let's see how that looks. It doesn't look good at all. So we should shape it. So in the very fractal noise, I'm going to tick on preview in the viewport, and let's make sure that this texture is actually bigger in size, maybe 1920 by 1920. We have a lot of modes in this fractal noise, so let's just choose something else, maybe warped 3. How about a bit more gain? No? Well, we don't want animation because this is going to be a static scene. Noise scale. Let's just see how this looks now. Actually, it doesn't look that bad. I think I'm rather happy with the way it looks straight away. Let's see, should we tweak more settings here? I think noise scale, we can just leave it as a default, but let's give more gain. Let's actually bump it to 0.9 and let's maybe decrease the number of octaves. Yeah, I think this will definitely work for us. I'm kind of happy with this. Great. So before we address more settings in the material, we might as well jump to the lighting. I'm going to turn on ray tracing. I see that the third rendering is on already, high dynamic range as well, and linear space lighting is turned on too, so that's good. That's great. Okay, let's jump to the skylight now. I see that it's not ticked on as a ray traced light, so I'm going to tick that on. So let's make it ray traced. That's good. We do want this omnidirectional, and I think we want some kind of a HDR, and I'm sure that we have some HDRs in our assets folder. So I'm just going to go there, and I'm going to grab every single one that we have available for us. I'll give it a moment to load. There we go, we have quite a few HDRs to choose from, so I'm just going to drag in the first one of the whole list. And I do need some kind of intermediate node to actually make sure that this HDR image is read by Skylight. So I'm going to use environment image. So I'm going to pipe it into the second input here, Skylight, and now environment image requires a HDR image. So I'm going to pipe that in as well. There we go, it is working, that's great. Let's flick through and choose one or the other HDRI image. In this case, these are our options. I'm actually quite fond of this TV studio. It is kind of funky because it has a lot of colors and it's quite dynamic. I think we will make do with this. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, that's quite nice. All right, what else can we do? I think by now we're more than ready to address the material a little bit more. So I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit closer to see how things wraps around it. I think I want to have a bit of a roughness here. So I can use the same fractal noise for the roughness. There we go, that's the input there. I'm gonna increase that. Let's see, 0.9, perhaps something like that. And I think I will give a little bit of metallicness, just at that. Now, I know it's not necessarily correct to set metallicness to, let's say, 0.5 setting, but this will be an artistic choice. Let's see, this already has a little bit more interesting texture. That's good. Obviously, we could address the actual path tracing and rendering a bit more to see it better. So let's add a path tracer. And let's add a refinement node. So in the refinement, I think I'm going to drop the numbers to 50. And I'm going to make sure that we're using a AI denoiser. In this case, I'm going to go for NVIDIA optics, and I'm going to make sure that it's denoising only on the last frame. So let's see how this looks now. There we go. It's getting a little bit more dynamic. How about if we turn the HDRI image a little bit so we can rotate it, for instance? We will just set it to something bigger, like, okay, let's try 157, for instance. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I think we're set with light, but it's a little bit overblown. And I think that is because our material is just too bright. So I'm gonna decrease the brightness in the material so we see things a little bit better. Just gonna look smoother. I'm gonna do the same thing on the floor too. So it could be just a tad darker. I think it already looks better. Okay, so this is a good time to start thinking about how to make the scene a little bit more interesting. We know that we can do refractions, so how about adding a couple of elements that would have glass material on them? Type in shape 3D. And I don't want a sphere. I'm gonna tick off the path tracing for now, so Shift R. So I don't want a sphere, I do want a cylinder, but I want this cylinder actually to be rounded, and hopefully it's gonna be a bit flatter. And I think we want to change this direction, so I'm gonna rotate it. There we go. I'm gonna change the way we see the handles, there we go. Yeah, this is good, but this will be a pain to position it nice, so instead of positioning it in the scene, I think I'm gonna zero out its position to the default. I'm gonna keep the rotation, so that's 90 there. And instead of connecting it to the root, I'm gonna connect it to the camera. So basically, now I know that it's completely flat and forward with the surface. That's good. That's exactly what I wanted. So maybe a bit smaller, and maybe somewhere here. It's a bit edgy, so I can increase the number of subdivisions to make it smoother. That's nice. All right, let's grab a glass material then. So glass material, I'm gonna connect it to the shape 3D. And let's turn on the path tracing, so Shift R. Yeah, there we go, that's quite nice. How about a little bit more roughness? 0.1 on the roughness. Actually, should it be perhaps a bit higher and bigger? Notice that this is becoming black, and that is because I actually didn't turn on the dynamic setting. So by default, it might be turned off. So always make sure that your ray tracing is actually dynamic, so it will reflect all the changes of anything happening in the scene at all times. Yeah, this is good. Although it might be a little bit too harsh, so maybe 0.05, so halfway there. Cool. I'll make a copy of this. I'm gonna connect it to the camera, and I'm gonna position it somewhere a little bit to the side. It's always nice to have at least a couple of elements like that. So maybe this one here, this could easily be higher, and maybe a little bit bigger. How about having a bit more bevel? Actually, 0.12 is kind of nice. I'm gonna do the same thing here, 0.12. And I'm gonna use the same glass RT. Okay, I think we are good to call this our initial setup. And if anything, these two could be a bit closer to the models. All right, let's see now. Yeah, and even bigger still now since we actually pushed it a little bit further from the camera. So maybe something like this, and something like that. So what fun things can we do with these models? I'm gonna turn off the path tracing now, and I'm gonna focus on every single one of them one by one. So let's see, this is our top one. This is the right one, and this is the left one. I'm gonna start with the top one. I'm gonna expand the hierarchy. I think first thing what I want to do is apply some deformers. Let's see what we have to choose from. You know what? I'm gonna go for VJ's best friend, mirroring option. Now we have quite a few mirrors. That is from procedural mirroring to mirroring as a post effect. I'm just gonna go for mirror deformer. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, this is a little bit more funky already. That's good. In fact, I might as well use mirroring for another model as well. For instance, yeah, this guy right here. Let's see how that would look. Obviously, we need to change some properties. Maybe we should go to the minus. Yeah, something like that. Now it looks a little bit more interesting, a little bit more abstract. Let's see how this looks with path tracing on. All right, not bad, not bad. Let's give it time to refine. This guy, we could apply something else for the third one. I'm gonna pull this off to the side, and I think I'm gonna go for. I think we have extruded faces deformer, so why don't we use that? Okay, already I see that there's something interesting happening. I think we should shape it. Yeah, it's kind of nice if it looks like it goes to spiky setting here. We have something like a fur. Why not? I think I'm going to keep that. Let's just flush out the numbers. Maybe something like 0.08. Let's preview with the path tracer. Yeah, that's good. It still feels that there's something missing, and I'd say that that something is some kind of a wrap around. So it would be nice to close this scene off somehow. So I'd say we could maybe have this guy right here being a mesh emitter, and we could set particles to trails and have those trails going around the setting. Let's see how that would look. Where is this guy? Hello, there are you. So let's make sure that we see the mesh. I'm gonna make sure that this one is hidden and this one is available. So now we do need a particle root. So I'm gonna connect that to the root of the scene. We do need a mesh emitter. There we go. Let's just feed in this model right here to the mesh emitter. We mentioned that we need trails, so let's just get that in the scene. Since we're adding particle simulation, I think we should lock our frame rate. So I'm pressing here on a P icon, 25 by 25. That's great. Motion of sorts. So obviously I will need a vortex if I want things to twirl. So let's add that. Now, I don't think our default here works for us. I'm gonna, first of all, set it on a 90 degrees in the pitch. And let's see. Yeah, I actually want this to go this way. So it's not 90. It's actually, I do want this to go the opposite way. So it's not minus 90. It's literally 90. There we go. Let's see. It is indeed the twirling. That's good. Perhaps it could have some kind of a more interesting motion. How about some curl noise, just to add a bit more excitement here. Let's make it small on the simulation speed, a little bit bigger on noise, and quite small on noise size in general, so 0.02. Let's preview that. Maybe a little bit more on noise size. Yeah, there we go. So this is a bit more interesting. Can we add something more? Maybe some turbulence. I'm gonna grab that. Let's straight away increase the velocity amount. I know for a fact that I like a little bit more velocity. Okay, I overdid with the velocity. Let's bring it a little bit higher up in a hierarchy. And let's start tweaking the settings here because this is a little bit too much. So how do we fix it? First of all, we have more modes here. So perhaps We can try the repel. Oh no, that's just crazy. Directional velocity. How about that? Yeah, that's cool, but it would be nice if it actually went this way because our particles are going that way as well. Yeah, now we're talking. Now we're getting somewhere. So this is a little bit more fluent. In fact, for us to see properly what's going on, we should probably translate this to a actual geometry by now. So first of all, I'm going to decrease the numbers to something a little bit more reasonable. So let's start with 8,000 by 8,000, and we will decrease it or increase it as we please later on. And let's make sure that this is extruded geometry. Okay, it is looking a little bit better. I think, though, it could be a bit thicker. So let's set it to 2. And I think it's rather fast, so we can add a time stretch to slow things down a bit. So I'm disconnecting it from the root. I'm going to connect time stretch to the root. And now I'm going to connect particle roots via time stretch. Let's drop the time half, so 0.5. Let's preview this. Yeah, a little bit better. In fact, we could set the same texture to be used by the trail renderer. So I'm going to do that. There we go. How about now? Let's preview the render. Yeah, I already like where it's going, so I think I'm going to tweak the particles a little bit more. I think the vortex could be smaller, actually, so I'm going to decrease that. And maybe I can change some settings here. So I'm going to decrease the simulation speed. I'm kind of happy with noise. Let's see now. However, I think I will mess about a little bit with the particle life. So let's set 15 seconds here and let's change the emission rate. Let's just drop it down a little bit so they're a bit more random. And maybe let's slow down the time a little bit more. So 0.2 there. Oh, now it's going to be easier to catch the exact frame we want to use. Yeah, maybe this. Let's preview. Yeah, cool. A little bit more tweaking, maybe, and we're more or less done with the particles. Let's see. Yeah, 202 here. And I think maybe, just maybe, we should make this a little bit bigger, the vortex. Let's see now. Yeah, this is more or less what I'm going after. This thing literally wrapping, and we have a couple of particles shooting off to the side just to make things a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting. Again, let's give it a moment to refine. We have 50 refinement set, and we have a ID noiser on. Right, nice. So let's turn off the path tracing. And let's check out this guy. Maybe we can add some cloners to him. We have many options for cloning, so I think we could try out something like clone to volume. Let's see how that would look. So I'm going to connect that to the root. I'm going to expand this 3D scene, and I'm going to connect this fellow as an input, as a mesh that we want to use, so source object. Okay, very good. We do need some kind of an output, so I'm going to go for shape 3D. There we are. So default settings are not necessarily super nice. I'm going to rotate the clones. I don't want to scale them by voxel size. And I'm sure they could be smaller, so maybe 0.2 or actually even less. 0.02. Now we can further tweak this with some, say, turbulence to make it a bit more dynamic. So I'm going to use that turbulence effector. And I want to alter the scale. So I'm going to click on uniform scale. I'm going to make sure that they're going to minus property. I don't want any animation though, so I'm going to take out animation property. Perhaps a little bit more gain. I think I'm happy with 0.8 here, and maybe more octaves. So I'll set it to something like 5. Let's preview this. Okay, a little bit more interesting. What scale do we have here? minus 0.5. Minus 0.35, how about that? Let's preview with the path tracing. All right, I think this is good, but the spheres right here are too aggressive. They definitely need a material. And I think they should be toned down a little bit. So I'm going to grab a material, I'm going to connect it to the shape 3D. I'm going to turn off the path tracer for a second. And I'm going to tone it a little bit down, and I'm going to give it more specularity. There we go. Let's preview this. Much better. In fact, it could be a little darker still. There we go. Okay, time to check out our resource pack and see if we have anything useful there. So assets, stills. I might as well grab this UI code and use it as an overlay here next to the camera, so we have a little bit more element here in the background. So we need a image plane. I'm going to connect it to the root. I'm going to feed this into the image plane, and I'm going to make sure that we see it on the screen. Now, this came in as a quad, and that's expected. So let's just make sure that it's scaled by X, and maybe let's change the blend mode. Yeah, something like alpha. We should probably push it a little bit further so it's actually behind the elements here. There we go. So now we can make it bigger. And this is rather intrusive because it's super bright. So how about 0.2 or 0.3 setting here? I guess 0.3 looks better. Now we should be a bit picky, and there shouldn't be things in the center. So we can use something like gradient to make sure that there's literally nothing in the center. So I'm going to pipe in gradient to the alpha image property. I'm going to make sure that this is 1920 by 1082 and radial. Let's make the inner range bigger too. It does exactly the opposite of what I wanted to do. So if I invert, now I'm getting there. Now it's exactly what I wanted. There we go. Yeah, that's much better. I am a big fan of LUTs, and I already see that there's one available and actually one attached to the camera. Let's see if we have more LUTs to choose from. Assets, LUTs, there we go, there's a whole list. I'm gonna bring them all in. So let's render this with the path tracer, and let's just cycle through different LUTs that we have. Actually, we can start. Ooh, the black and white thing looks kind of nice. How about this one? That is too bright, too yellow, too bright still. Well, this is kind of nice, but I'm beginning to suspect that the one that we had by default is actually quite all right, unless we want to go completely black and white. I'm gonna stick with this one for now. Okay, let's take out the path tracing. Let's restart the playhead. What else can we add here to make this a little bit more interesting or a little bit more dynamic in the compositing? I think some text would make do. Actually, I think some text would really make do here. Let's bring in some typography. We do have that in assets. So there's our typography. I'm just going to bring them all in, why not? And I think I'm going to set the text and I'm going to write one very specific thing. And that thing will be hashtag notch course. And I'm going to share this to social, and I hope you guys will do too, your take of this setting. Because, of course, Notch Course should be online, should be hashtagged with Notch Course, and should be hashtagged with Made with Notch. Because I think it's important to share what you do, and I'm very keen to see what you guys build and what's your take on this setting. So I'm going to make sure to position it in the back. So there we go. I'm going to go for position Z, and I'm just going to turn it all the way back. I'm going to lift it a little bit higher. This could be thicker. I don't like this font. How about, yeah, this is much better. And in fact, it shouldn't have any extrusion, so I'm going to make it flat. There we go. Color should be darker. There we go. this element right here, the image plane, should be behind the text as well. So a little bit back with you. Let's make it bigger. And let's bring the font, let's bring the typography a little bit closer. Yes, there we go. A little bit too big. Yeah, something like that. And Notch actually supports Unicode, so if I haven't mentioned that yet, here I am saying that. And I did see that we have some Japanese typography available for us. Let's just double check. Yeah, that's exactly what we brought in. So let's use Google Translate. Let's write something in Japanese. There we go. How about soon? Soon in a few days. Gradually. There we go. Soon, before long, in a short time. I think this is a good one for us because this course is definitely going to be out and about very soon. So I'm going to add one more text. I'm going to connect it to the camera. I'm going to offset it in the Z space, or actually before I do that, I should probably choose the typography and actually have some text. There we go. Now I can offset it in the Z space. Right. I did have a couple of options. This one is much nicer. K-font. I do want this to be flat as well, so I'm going to flat it out. I'm going to make it smaller. And I'm going to push it here on the side. Could be smaller still, and actually darker. There we are. So I'm going to reset the playhead, and I'm going to play it back till I see something that I like this frame here. Let's preview this. Okay, I think I'm ready to make these both text units a little bit darker because they're still a little bit too bright for my liking. And then I will tidy up the node graph and I think I'm done because, well, obviously we can push this further and further. But I think at this point, I'm rather happy already. So let's tidy up a little bit. So our path tracing nodes will be here. Let's move this aside. Actually, we should put it next to the lighting. So there we go. So all the lighting will be living right here on the side. Then we have a platform where everyone is standing on. So we can leave it here. Then we have 3 models and they all have their specialty things. For instance, this one has a clone to volume. So I'm gonna leave it here. And let's make sure that the mirror deformer is here as well. They're sharing one material, that's good. I'm gonna leave it in the center. This fellow right here is just mirrored and he's fine with it. Oh no, actually he's using particles. Aha, so then this guy right here with a little bit of spikes will be in the bottom. And this particle system will go a little bit atop, so we have it closer here. Actually, one more thing that we could do here with the particles is use a deformer because trail render is based on geometry. So we could actually grab something like curl noise deformer and apply that on a trail renderer. So that's a little handy tip if I haven't mentioned that before. Here we are. Trail render actually works with any and all deformers. Shouldn't be too big, the noise scale. Maybe something like this, just so we have things a little bit more dynamic. Yeah, this is absolutely much nicer. So curl noise on the trail render, and let's just flesh out the numbers. 0.4, 0.9, 0.6. Cool. So here in the bottom we have a mess of nodes. So there's a camera. There are 2 nodes with the text. That's good. We can keep it here. There's one color LUT, so let's move it down. And there's image plane, and that image plane is the overlay that we used here for the background elements. And these are our glass spheres. So I'm gonna move it somewhere here. I think now this node graph is starting to look a little bit more tidy. In fact, all of these shape 3Ds could be aligned. Standing right here. There we go. This could easily be lower. Now, I cannot stress enough how important it is to tidy up your node graphs. Now, sometimes it's a little bit of a task, but it's absolutely worth it to invest a little bit of time to make sure that it's readable. Because if you had to come back to this setting after a while, you might be completely lost with all what's going on. So it's good to make sure that you make sense of it all anytime you open it. Then another thing to do is optimize the resources. I'm going to go for remove unused because we literally don't need all of those HDRs. We don't need all of those LUTs. We can keep just what we've used. And I think we're more or less set to render. I actually like this shot. So right before we go, I think I'm going to reanimate this once more so I get a nice shot. There we go. And I think I do want to make one last change. I don't want to use the light scattering beam. Instead, I'm going to build a image plane with a gradient. It's going to wrap things much nicer. So I do want things to be a little bit darker on the corners and rather bright in the center. So I have image plane. I'm going to offset in the Z space. It should be quite far. It could easily be even 20 there. I'm going to make it big. And I'm going to use gradient as a input for that. There we go. Gradient. I don't want this linear. And I don't want this small. I want this big. So 1920 by 1920. Radial. And I can actually set it a little bit to the side. So somewhere maybe here. Yeah, something like that. Let's preview. I think this will work. I'm already sure that it will. So let's just go through the settings that we have. Path tracer, I'm happy with the defaults. RT refinement, 50 on the max refinement steps, that's fine. AI denoising, we're not gonna use that. So I'm just gonna tick that off. Let's see the text here. I think once we're rendering, it becomes quite brighter. So I will make it even darker still. Let's see if we can make it darker. Yeah, I'm gonna drop it to something like this. Okay, so I am hitting Shift R to enable the path tracer, Shift F8 to open the rendering dialog. And I think I'm gonna set my preferences here. So anti-aliasing passes. I'm gonna set it to 3. And I think I'm gonna give it 500 ray trace refine steps. Actually, let's be generous. Let's go for 800. And I will drop it off straight on the desktop. There we go, save, okay. And now we wait. And there we go, our render is done. I'm gonna hit okay. And I'm gonna preview this file on my desktop. So we have some generated materials going on. We have some reflections on it. We have some glass, we have particles, we have deformers, and we have cloners. I think this sums up the course quite well. In fact, I think this is all ready to go on Instagram. So I'm going to upload mine and I'm looking forward to see your takes on this chapter. So hashtag Notch course and hashtag Make with Notch, and see you online and in other courses.